Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me. And this is Delcare Veritan, and this is the real spiel. Let me mute the other mic and make sure I'm muted over here. So we're just getting into a conversation very quickly about what took place on the Breakfast Club today. And just let me know if you can hear me before I start going on my rampage, because a rampage I shall go. A rampage I shall go. Just making sure everybody can hear me. Everybody is in here. Um, just signal to me if you can hear me. I just want to make sure that I'm broadcasting for everybody to hear me. Okay, perfectly. Thank you very much for letting me know. Good. Thank you, Yvonne, for letting me know. We got to have a little bit of a conversation tonight. I'm going to have a talk. I'm going to do a little bit of a study. We got to hammer some things down because you just can't invite everybody to breakfast. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, hammer some things down because you just can't invite everybody. Okay, well, I'm here. The Breakfast Club. The Breakfast Club and our dear friends at the Breakfast Club, who I am not going to ridicule. I will not ridicule. I'm not going to call them any names. What I'm going to do is I'm going to identify that there's a whole lot of things going wrong in the Black community when we just simply invite anybody to breakfast. You understand? We just can't invite anybody to breakfast. And so what they basically did is they invited Jonathan Greenblatt, okay, the enemy to Black people all over America, the enemy to Black people in Israel, and essentially the enemy to America and anybody who wants privacy or the capacity to run their own show, financially or otherwise. David Greenblatt, the chair of the Anti-Defamation League. I've said his name very many times, but it's just so incredible to me how we allow individuals to have a platform and for their rhetoric to go unchecked. And so tonight, in a hybrid move, I'm going to try to address some of the things said by Jonathan Greenblatt. And then we're going to have a conversation about other things that I think many of you will like. We'll do a little quick study. I call it the history of religion, getting into how the worldview of particular voices has always been in a position to create hegemonic misinformation. And without any further ado, can we get going? We're going to get going. All right. I'm sorry I didn't give you a heads up. I'm really trying to get out of here in an hour. I desperately want to continue my evening in respect to going to the gym and getting some things done personally. And I just wanted to get us going. I'm still looking for some of our guests, but I was not going to go another night without doing a live. All right, so here we go. Moving quickly into this conversation. Let's see. I start from DJ Envy asking a question. And again, I'm not going to make any predeterminations about these gentlemen's agenda. They need content. They're content creators. I'm a content creator. I realize that. And they are bringing anyone on the show who they think will get a level of viewership. And right now, this guy is radioactive, so they brought him on the show. And I get it. But they should not have brought him on the show unchecked. They should have had a voice to the contrary so that this gentleman's skewed rhetoric does not just go unchecked. And I will not say they're pandering to a Jewish base or anything of the kind. I'm just going to say they're content creators. They need content. They put a radioactive guy on their show, knowing that he was going to be a talking head for Zionism. And he just went completely off the rails, in my opinion. But let's listen and let's see what these guys got to say. And hopefully the feed works and behaves itself.
The Jewish people, then not Jewish people, and maybe stop it, and justice and fair treatment to all. We all talk about intersectionality today. We think
what is shouldn't we say, or what are the terms?
I think you're saying what exactly is anti-Semitism?
No. Yes, well, that's part of it too. Like, let's say Kanye says Jewish people have all the power.
Let's not use him.
No,
I would rather use me as an example.
Okay, well, let's say people say Jewish people have all the power, or Jewish people run Hollywood, or Jewish people run the music industry. These are the things that we've been hearing recently. Explain to us what those terms mean to you, and is it hurtful? Is it painful? Is it not? Like, what is it to you? Like, if you ask me, the N-word, how does that feel? And this, that, and the other, we can define that. But how does that feel to you? And what can we say? What can't we say? What is foul? What is not foul?
Well, look, DJ Envy, I'm really glad you asked the question. And I'm just going to share, Charlamagne and I have been talking for years now.
Years.
And a lot of what we do is behind the scenes. And sometimes we do call things out, but I believe that you call people in before you call them out.
Absolutely.
And I don't believe in cancel culture. I believe in counsel culture. So I know, by coming on this show, there are people in the Jewish community who are going to criticize me. But I think we've got to engage with each other.
I agree.
And vice versa.
And learn.
Yeah, our community is going to be like, why y'all got him on the show?
I'm sure you're going to hear it. There are a lot of people who don't like me. People on the far right, people on the far left, people in all kinds of communities. Because I think, we call it out, whether it's Kanye West or Tucker Carlson or Marjorie Taylor Greene or sometimes Ilhan Omar, we will call it out. Or SNL or Amazon, we call it out. So that being said, what do we call out? So again, our core mission, if you will, is protect the Jewish people. That's our core purpose. So anti-Semitism is the threat. So anti-Semitism is kind of an irrational, let's say, hatred of Jewish individuals or institutions because they are Jewish. And anti-Semitism is interesting if you think about it relative to other forms of prejudice, because I think anti-Semitism, it's like a conspiracy theory. Like, it's about the way the world works. So the Jews did this to me. The Jews have too much power. The Jews are the communists. The Jews are the capitalists. The Jews control Congress. The Jews want to kill Christian people, Muslim people, Black people, whatever. It's this warped kind of idea that shapeshifts relative to time and place. I mean, it's described as the oldest hatred. It's been around thousands of years. After the Jews were expelled from Jerusalem by the Romans and torn from their land, and they lived in diaspora as a small community in Europe, in the Middle East, in parts of Asia. And these Jews continued speaking Hebrew. They didn't assimilate into the mainstream population. They continued their own religion. They didn't adopt Christianity or Islam. They continued their own dietary rules. They didn't adopt what the mainstream did. Jews don't believe in conversion or proselytization, so they stayed small. They didn't really grow. So the upshot of that is when the church, like in Europe, needed someone to blame the Jews. When the kings needed someone to blame those Jews. When the caliphate needed someone to blame those Jews, because they were always there, they were always different, they were always living on them. So forward to
Okay, I'm gonna freeze it there because there's enough there.
All right, folks. Anyone with me knows that probably
There's enough there. There's more than enough there that I can jump into, and I'm going to jump into it right now. Okay. First of all, let's establish some of the great fallacies of what he said. And this thing went on for an hour, and it was so easy to cherry pick the stuff he said. Like, it was not hard at all. First and foremost, okay, anti-Semitism in its original form is hatred of Israel. Anti-Shemitism, anti-Shemitic. It's hatred of Israel. Israel coming out of Egypt, this group of 2 million slaves coming out of Egypt and becoming a nomadic group with sheep and cattle, and goats, and roaming through the Sinai, dealing with the wells of the Canaanites and dealing with the grass and other natural resources for their livelihood. The Amalekites, we know, attacked them, attacking them from the rear. We also understand that when they crossed over the Jordan, after about 40 years in the wilderness, they dealt with other Canaanite groups that saw them as a threat. This is where the concept of true anti-Shemitic, but truly anti-Israel behavior begins. It begins in the Bible. We can see it all for ourselves. We can see it all through the Torah. It doesn't just stop there. It continues. And the reason that these people are hated from the very beginning is because the hand of God is with them. The very reason that they're hated from the very beginning is the hand of God is with them. And God's people have always been hated. And so the earliest form of religious hatred is for the original ancestral people of the Bible. David Greenblatt said, or Jonathan Greenblatt says, that hatred of the Jews is the oldest form of religious hatred. Now, he was very careful with his words because we also do realize, part and parcel, hand in hand, that the oldest form of ethnic hatred is the hatred of Black people. That's the oldest form of that. All right. And that begins when the European power structure becomes acquainted with the wealth of Africa. That's much, much later. But let's address the error of what he said initially. The oldest form of religious hatred is individuals who hated the people of God, period. People of God, the true people of God. They are hated because of the favor that God has put on their lives. They're hated because God has given them land that they were not in the very initial phases. They are hated simply because God has chosen them. That is the original hatred, and it is to the Israelite people, not the Jews, not the one tribe. It is to the 12 tribes coming out of Egypt, and the half tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim coming out of Egypt, taking over the Canaanite countryside, and becoming a power structure and a powerhouse for God. That is what is the oldest religious hatred. And they're not even hated simply because of a religion. They are hated because of the favor that God has put on them in respect to who they are, right? And God did that. People didn't do it. God did that. Let me say it again. God did that. People didn't do it. God did that because God hardens Pharaoh's heart. God hardens the heart of Pharaoh. He puts the hatred. I know you don't like it like this, but it's facts. He puts the hatred in Pharaoh. And he does it for a specific theological reason, because he wants to prove to the ancient Egyptian that there is no pantheon of gods in the Egyptian pantheon of deity, that Pharaoh's not a god, that the Nile is not a god, that the sun is not a god, that the moon is not a god, that fire is not a god, that the frogs are not a god, that the flies are not a god, that the alligator is not a god. He puts it clearly that snakes are not gods. He wants to show the entire Egyptian religious pantheon in the 10 plagues that you think these things are God. Lastly, with Pharaoh, I'm letting you know, none of them are God. I am God of very God. I am the I am. And he established that hate in Pharaoh's heart so that God can be glorified. Okay? So let's get there. Let's start there, Jonathan Greenblatt. Are you with me? Are you with me? He moves on to say that individuals are simply cherry picking and blaming all matters of worldly issues on, again, his terminology is the Jews. And now what he's actually doing is he's fast forwarding from ancient time, ancient biblical antiquity, into modern Germany and European, the European perspective of the interaction of Jewish people of the Middle Ages all the way up until the early 20th century. And what are those? And the early church era into Islam, right? So he's basically trying to go from the early 4th century to the 7th century to the Middle Ages, all the way to the 20th century. He's trying to do it in all one sentence, right? And he's trying to say that, oh, we've always been hated. People just hate us. People just hate us. We're just Jews, and they hate us, and they hate us, and they hate us. And everything that he's saying is so disingenuous because it has no historical lens. It has no timely landmark to demonstrate how this shift in this behavior took place. The early church, of course, hated Jewish people, right? And I'll use these words very clearly, and I'm not careful with them. They hated Jewish people for a specific couple of reasons. They hated the Jewish capacity to try to legalize the Christians. So Christians wanted to be free of the law. The early Christian church, and looking at every Paulinus epistle that you can look into, wanted to be free of the law. And I know that there's some factions of the Hebrew Israelite that thinks that this was only meant for a section of the church, but the entire church wanted to be essentially free of the stigmas of the Mosaic law. And the church took great issue in certain what referred to as Judaizers trying to drag factions of the church back into a level of legalism. Also, the church took exception at the Jewish community attempting to utilize both the calendar and the feasts of Judaism in respect to the intermingling of Christianity, hence Pentecost, the Passover, and all these new observances of the early church. They did not want any part of it, including their calendar. And so very quickly, Christianity and Judaism were charting separate paths. Remember, early Christianity is hated by the Roman system. It is an illegal religion. They have to hide to practice it. They have to hide to do it. The Jewish community is complicit with Rome in helping Christians be sought out to be killed by Rome. Oh, it's a terrible thing to say. That is Saul of Tarsus's entire ministry. Saul's ministry, Saul of Tarsus, is complicit with Rome, helping the Roman government find Christian church members, clergy, because remember, they're underground, dragging them into captivity on behest of Rome. This is what the early Jew did. The Jew helped Rome to capture Christians. Of course, the Christian community hated them. That was a hatred. And so some of you are trying to, romanticize it, but they did not like Saul. They did not trust Saul. They considered all of the Jews who did not fall towards worshiping Christ a synagogue of Satan. This is what the rhetoric that you are reading in the New Testament. Okay, I'm going quickly. Right, I'll look at your comments later. Moving also into the early church period, when the church now has become an institution of the Byzantine Empire, the Jews and the early Christians are definitely in a divide, because now the empire is going in the direction of Christianity. There's no advantage anymore for the Christian church to even sympathize or empathize with the Jews. They have no need to do it anymore because they have the favor of the emperor. This is essentially apathy. It moves towards a place of apathy because they're no longer under threat of arrest. They're no longer under threat of persecution. They have the safety of the empire. And now the Jewish religion falls on the wrong side of the Roman system because the Roman Byzantine system now is a pro-Christian system, moving quickly into the Middle Ages. Into the Middle Ages, the Jewish occupation after the destruction of Jerusalem, of the temple, and the spreading out of the Jews all over basically Europe, and you can even say the world. Yes, there is a strong negative Jewish sentiment that sits on the tongues of the proletariat and the tongues even of the empire. The Jewish experience is now an experience where they no longer have a homeland, they no longer have a temple, and the Jewish experience changes drastically from the first 1,000 years prior to the temple destruction. It's a drastic change for them, and no greater change takes place in Europe. And as we see through the Middle Ages, the Jewish community has to develop a level of or a method in respect to keeping its power base structured. And this is another thing he says, which is wrong. He says the Jews don't proselytize. Any quick look through the New Testament prior to the destruction of the temple and prior even to the birth of Christ, that it's clear that the Jewish community is a proselytizing community. When you get to Acts chapter 2, you see that Jews are coming from everywhere. There's Jews everywhere. There's Jewish people. There's more Jewish people outside of Judea than inside. The Jewishness is a worldwide empire phenomenon. So this is what's taking place when it comes to the concept of Jewish proselytizing. Jewish people absolutely proselytized. Jewish people didn't stay in small communities, what he was saying. They absolutely proselytized. Christ says it himself, that you go all around the earth proselytizing everywhere to make them twice the child of hell as yourself. He was speaking to the Pharisees. So Jewishness was very similar to Hellenism, the Greek concept of spreading Greekness everywhere. Jewishness was also on the same parallel in the first century and just before the first century and on. So this is, again, a major misdirection from this individual Greenblatt. And then we get, again, all the way back now to the European history, to true European history. What are the Jews doing in early Europe? Who are they siding with? Who are they helping? They are propping up dictators via financial assistance. They are financing the Napoleonic Wars. Absolutely. They are financing the Crusades. They are putting themselves in power positions with finances. And no greater or no worse example do we have, just to go quickly, is both Russia and Germany. We have no greater example of how the Jewish community of the time, of the era, is attempting to insert control because they don't have a homeland, because they don't have the help of an army, but their goal is to make sure that they're making allegiances with power players in all of the major empires that they are existing in. This has been a function of the Jewish community from antiquity. And this is what he's trying to pass off as saying that people just arbitrarily do not like Jews. And that is untrue. That is completely untrue. It is not arbitrary. And it's specific to a European sect of Judaism. And last but not least, okay, which we don't even get to. Okay, I'm glad we're getting rid of some of these crazy ads that come out here. And I'm going to take a look at your comments right now. We get to a place now where you have a modern Jewish mind, you have a modern Jewish presence in the Americas. You have a Jewish community that is passing itself off as white, a Jewish community that is in a position where it has the power and the dexterity to oppress in America, to act like they are white. This is the writings of James Baldwin, which I will show you. That's in my community page too, where James Baldwin is saying, listen, he hated the Jews. This is what he writes it. I hated the Jews. I hated my Jewish landlord because he put me in a house that was, wasn't very good, put my family in a house not very good. I hated the Jewish butcher because, he was selling us expensive, bad meat. And he goes down the line of this conversation of Negro anti-Semitism, because he said, to us, it's not anti-Semitism. The Jew was acting like a white racist. And this is why we hated him. We did not hate him because he's a Jew. In fact, we hated him because he was acting white, which made us hate him even more when we recognized that it's not a white man, it's actually a Jew who suffered like we suffered, and it made us hate him even more. And these conversations are what James Baldwin was having in the 60s. Let me take a look. I'm just going to take a look. And Adi Al-Kantani, the first hater of man was the devil. And that's very true. It's such a true thing. It's very true. That's a great study. That's a great study. Absolutely. Let me just scroll down. Shalom, everybody. Miss Ann, greetings to you. I didn't say good evening to anybody. I just jumped into this thing. I saw Tatia Hinton. Greetings to you. I'm just going to keep going. Yeah, man. The crap that this guy says definitely goes in one ear and comes out the other. He said a lot of nonsense, and they never. Oh, this is the Hebrew part. Thank you very much, Tova. Listen, to speak Hebrew in the first century, and this is one of the things I said, and I broke it down, I think, very clearly when I spoke to Rabbi Rosenberg. When you speak Hebrew, when you have a Hebrew-based language in the first century, and then you spread out, and this was Harry Rosenberg's claim, that Jews adopted the languages of the place they spread to, and their Hebrew language became symbiotic with the language of the places they went. I said, well, let's make sense of this. If we say that, because this is what we're saying. Greenblatt said, oh, they didn't change language. They kept speaking Hebrew. They kept their dietary laws. Okay, so. When the Germanic tribes, when members of the Germanic tribes, referred to as the Khazars, as we know, this is history. This is not hard to tell. When the king caused them to convert to Judaism, the baseline of their language was a Germanic language. It's a Germanic language. We speak, those English speakers, we're speaking a Germanic language, right? English was another language given to the Germanic tribes to allow the priests to be able to teach them the scripture. So this language that we're speaking, this Germanic language, was a language created to communicate phonetically with Germanic tribesmen to turn them into Christians, which is what English really is. It is a Germanic language. That's why it has so very few rules. That's why it's such a hard language to learn. The Ashkenazi also have a Germanic language. And so that demonstrates that if your language base is Germanic, then if your language base is not a Hebrew-based language that maybe even mixed with Latin, like the Sephardic Jew who left Rome in the first century and split, whose language is Latin-based Hebrew, which is very reasonable, that individual can draw his Jewishness from the first century. But Germanic mixed with Hebrew means that you were not part of the tapestry of the Roman Empire, because if you were, your language base would be Latin, because Romans spoke Latin, and Hebrew. It would be Latin and Hebrew, if what Reverend Rosenberg, Rabbi Rosenberg is saying is true, that the Jewish community would hybridize their language based on where they were. So a Germanic-based language with Hebrew means that you were not part of the Roman Empire, because the Roman Empire would have spoken Latin, would have spoken Greek. So your Jewish language, your Hebrew language would have been either a language intermingled with Grecian language, Koine Greek, or intermingled with Latin, similar to Ladino, similar to the Sephardic Jew. That's why the Sephardic Jew, nobody gives them no smoke, because their language and their geography demonstrates they must have been in close proximity to the Roman first century empire of Rome, and therefore they can trace their Jewishness from the very first century, where the Ashkenazi can't do that. And so their language was adopted after the fact, after their conversion and requiring to learn the Mosaic text and to learn Hebrew. So their language now becomes a hybrid of what their language base was, and then the new Hebrew that they had to be taught in order to participate in the Jewish ethos. Okay. Good night to everybody. Good night from the UK. Just saying hello to everybody here. Hello, French wee wee. Hello, everybody. Yes, please like, share, and subscribe as you come in, as we come in. Okay. So yes, we got a lot of trolls running around in here. So Charlemagne and his crew, DJ Envy, and I forget the young lady's name. I don't watch their show. I only watch it for scenarios like this. They're ill-equipped to answer these kind of claims from him, and I'm not going to show any more from him. But the point is, as I get into my next phase, the point is that the Black community cannot allow enemies to our conversation, to our history, to our current existence, to basically sit on platforms that we have made famous. Charlemagne and these folks have made that show, a pop cult favorite show. We can't bring the devil to sit down and have a full doctrinal teaching without a contra argument. It's not even good journalism. It's not even appropriate journalism to have this guy just get up there and just start barking out all his things. Also what he said, his analysts that are basically outsourcing. They said 12,000 different complaints of anti-Semitic conversations. And people, when somebody says trope, when you got to look up the meaning of words. Trope means something said in a figurative way. If I say something figuratively, that doesn't, even the concept of calling it a trope doesn't bring it to the point where it should be offensive. If I use a figurative conversation. So if I'm talking about a Chinese man and I'm saying, I'm talking in a parabolic or a story, and I say, you know what, let's take the Chinese and let's say, the Chinese come in and they stick together and they stay in their particular communities. They make Chinese food. They speak Chinese. If that figurativeness to them, to use even the word, to say even a Jewish anecdote, or to say Jewish people control this, that to them is a figurative trope, and therefore it's anti-Semitic. So let's use that example right now before I go on to the teaching, because I have a teaching for us that I think you guys are going to like. I call it The History of Religion. Okay, give me 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Who controls the NBA from the player side? What race controls the NBA from the player side? Is this hard? Is it very hard? Who controls the NBA from the player side as far as the race of people who are playing basketball predominantly in the NBA? Right? Who's that? Blacks, right? African Americans. Okay? Who controls the NBA from the ownership side? What race, what ethnicity of people predominantly control the NBA, have control in the ownership categories of the NBA? Who? The Jew. That figurativeness is a trope that they would say, well, that's anti-Semitic. It's anti-Semitic to imply that one racial group controls an entire organization when the facts of the matter is that is true. It's very true. So to say that Jewish people control Hollywood says essentially that there is a group of Jewish individuals in entertainment, Walt Disney and all these other production companies, that have the capacity to control the conversation in respect to Hollywood. How can that be anti-Semitic? How can it be anti-Semitic? Now, what I will grant him is to arbitrarily say Jews control the world, right? It's not true, because they don't. But do Jews have a very strong footprint in American politics? Absolutely. Do Jews make up some of the strongest lobby groups when it comes to Congress? Because Congress is who gets things done. Thank you for this information, Christina King. But Congress are the individuals who make sure that all that funding comes from America to Israel. Do Jews have one of the strongest lobby groups? Absolutely. The ADL is the best example, right? Were Jews very instrumental in the Clinton administration and the Obama administration? Did Jews had an inside track into that administration? Absolutely. Jonathan Greenblatt was in both administrations. So when we say things like that, how many Jews are Superior Court judges, or how many Jews are in positions of power in America? These things are demographics. Why do people keep censuses? Why do people keep track of ethno-statistics? So that these conversations can be had with a level of merit, with a level of quantifiableness, with a level of authenticity that can be tracked, because it is something that they don't want to come to the forefront, because their belief is that it makes people hate Jews. I wish we could say that blacks control America. I wish we could say that blacks control the Congress. I wish we can say that blacks control public opinion, which we actually do. We actually do. We actually, that's why they're afraid of us. That's why they have to quiet us when we start talking. That's why they have analysts looking at things that we say. Also, another thing he said, which I think the Hebrew community should look into. He was talking about recently how a Hebrew Israelite shot a Jewish man, and he shot a Jewish man, and they said, "Well, how can I be an anti-Semite when I'm a Hebrew?" And he used that terminology there, and it's like, well, he has a point, Jonathan Greenblatt. There must be a different motive. You're saying that because this ethnicity of man shot that ethnicity of man, it's an anti-Semitic crime. Did you look into anything else? Is there anything else there? Do we even know if that's a Hebrew Israelite man that did that? Or are you just calling every black person that shoots a Jew a Hebrew Israelite? Do you know if he's a member of a Hebrew Israelite organization? Or you're just casting that out there as an anti-black trope, Jonathan Greenblatt? It's just too much. There's too much to say about a gentleman like that. There's too much to say. There's too much to talk about with him. That it's irresponsible for the black social media groups. And I hope Charlemagne and DJ Envy and all of the individuals associated with that show, I hope you hear this. I hope you see this. You're irresponsible. And what you need to do is you need to bring somebody else on now, quickly bring on Umar, bring somebody in there to cut down the lies that this gentleman has just spoken for an hour unchecked, while you guys pandered to his sense of victimization from a community in power. Come on now. The Jewish community from the 60s to today, from the 1960s to today, has no leg to stand on to claim victimization. You don't have a leg to stand on. They don't. No one was marching around America because Jewish people were being shot by police. Okay, they weren't doing that. The Jewish community doesn't have a leg to stand on. It's embarrassing. You should be embarrassed that the ADL is using the fact that a pedophile murderer was the reason that the ADL began. Using that as your story. Imagine we started an organization right, to protect black people because of the R. Kelly case. And then apparently R. Kelly might get off because these chicks are saying something in a completely different direction. But regardless of that, imagine we use R. Kelly as our reasoning to stand up and gain solidarity to the world, that R. Kelly was our reason. And the guy who they're using, Leo Frank, who they're using as their rallying cry to protect Jewish people all over the world, was a pedophile murderer. That's the guy. That's your hero. That's your king. Oh my God. Let me just stop, bro. I can't say enough about this guy. I really can't. I cannot say enough about the evils of Jonathan Greenblatt. I can't. There's too much to talk about. It's too much to bring up to keep talking about that gentleman. I don't have the wind in me to do it, to be honest with you. I wanted to, oh boy, slideshow. Let me see if this thing's gonna work. I wanted to give us a quick study on the era of the apologist. Oh, is it gonna work for me? Okay, just need to be patient, I guess. The era of the history of religion, and I get into something. I think I've blended these two presentations with the era of the apologist. I don't like using this because I use my other one better. Slideshow. Okay. There we go. All right. Let me check what you guys are saying, and then I'm going to get into this. Charlemagne the Fed is doing exactly what he's been paid to do. Yeah. You see, I didn't want to say that. You know what? I didn't want to say that, Second Exodus, but you can say it. The son of general during the 6-Day War. No Jewish person can trace their ancestry back to Hebrew people. Yeah. And he mentioned that. He mentioned that, you know, people are running around saying that Jews are imposters, Jews are imposters, Jews are imposters, and you know, of course, he's saying that's anti-Semitic, and we're not saying Jews are imposters. We're saying that the Ashkenazi cannot trace their heritage back to the indigenous people of the Bible. You can be Jewish. Anyone can be Jewish. Anyone can be Jewish, but anyone can't be Semitic. Okay? The South African wanted all of us to believe that they were indigenous to South Africa. The Dutch Boer, right? That's who they are. Those people are Dutch settlers that came to South Africa. They wanted us to believe they were Afrikaners, right? Oh my gosh. Does anybody believe that those white people in South Africa are indigenous to South Africa? Does anybody believe that anymore? Is that something we believe anymore? Is that hard science? Is that hard anthropology? Is that hard history to know that these people are settlers that came over? Is that difficult for us to figure out? So we are not telling the Jewish community, specifically the Ashkenazi community, the 92% of these individuals that control Israel, the people that are the chief voices for Zionism, we're not telling you that you're not Jewish. We're telling you that your ancient Semitic lineage does not trace to the land. It traces somewhere else, and you chose to be Jewish later. That's your true history. Okay, and Greenblatt brought up the fact that his wife is an Iranian Jew, a Persian Jew. Can Jewish people trace themselves to Persia? Absolutely. We have a whole book of Esther, and she is more authentic than him. Okay, can the Jew trace himself to Persia? Of course he can. Can the Jew trace themselves to Babylon? She should be able to too, right? We know that the Jewish community dwelt amongst the Persian Empire. You have a whole Old Testament book about it. Period. No problem. An Iranian Jew is a Jew of the land. And this is the last part. He said the Jews didn't convert. The individuals, the Semitic people, the indigenous of Palestine, absolutely were forced to convert to Islam, and some are converted to Christianity too. That's just ridiculous. To say that Jews don't convert means that who were the 12 apostles? Oh my gosh, the man said that Jewish people didn't convert. They didn't convert. They didn't convert to Christianity. They didn't convert to Islam. Who are the 12 apostles, my friend? Oh my gosh, Jewish people didn't convert to Christianity. Wow. We Christians are just making this whole thing up. The whole New Testament, throw that out the window. And of course, Jewish people were converted to Islam. When Islam rolled through Palestine, rolled through the West, rolled through the East, convert or die, those people converted. Many of the ones that were left behind, because we know that when Nebuchadnezzar took the elite of Israel, of Judah rather, the elite of Judah, right? The Yehudin, when he took the elite of them, he left the common people in the land. So many of them stayed in the land. And then the Jew came back and called them Samaritans, right? So Jewish people, let's be better. Semitic people who were part of the tribe of Judah were in the land, stayed in the land, were left behind. And yes, later on, after Roman occupation, after Roman occupation, 632 AD, did the Muslims sweep through that area and force conversions? You bet your bottom dollar they did. You kidding me? What a ridiculous sentence. Like, where did this guy learn his history? It's dumb. He's dumb. Doesn't make any sense. Jews live happily in Morocco. Jews live happily. Jews and Muslims live happily in West Africa too. Happily together. But were they absolutely forced to convert in some areas? Absolutely they did. And they converted quickly to save their lives. And Amala Adullah asked, the Ashkenaz cannot be Semitic. He absolutely can be Jewish though, but he cannot be Semitic. And therefore, to say that they are not Semitic is not anti-Semitic because they're not Semitic, but they absolutely can be Jewish. They absolutely can be Jewish. Can't be Semitic. Can't be. I can move to Japan. I can get a Japanese passport. I can learn to speak Japanese. And when I'm 150 years old, I might look at some Japanese kid and say, hey, I'm indigenous to the land. He can look at me and say, sir, come on now. I might be able to speak Japanese better than him. I might know his history better than him. But he might say, sir, you know you're not indigenous to Japan. You're a Japanese citizen, sir, but you're not indigenous to Japan. Am I going to fight that little kid? Say, ooh, how dare you? I've been here longer than you. I know Japanese. I know more Japanese words than you. I know more Japanese history than you. I'm not indigenous to the place. That's what we're saying. You're not indigenous to Israel. We know how you got there. We know how you got there. Stop trying to tell everybody to shut up. Stop trying to tell everybody to stop telling you your history. We know your history. You are squatters. You are squatters. You were given land by NATO. You are squatters. Period. You have been allowed to squat by the international community. You have taken over a land that you are not from, 92% of you. And the ones that are from there, the poor individuals who are actually from there, who come from there, who've come back, you haven't let them do exactly what you did. You squatted on another place that you did not come from, but the indigenous people who came back from America, came back from Africa and said, we are Israel too. You told them they're illegitimate. Come on, you guys need to stop. The ADL isn't defending Damona. The ADL isn't defending the Ethiopian. The ADL isn't defending the Palestinian Jew. The ADL isn't defending the Iranian Jew. The ADL isn't defending any of those people. You are not there to defend. And you said that, first of all, when you listen to the whole interview, and I'm sorry, I'm going to get to this scroll in a minute, but when you listen to the whole interview, he tries to make it seem like the ADL is there to protect all marginalized groups. But then he says, you know, our core values is to defend Jewish people. We know what you're there for. We know who you're there for. We know who you represent. You don't represent us. Stop pretending like you do. You don't represent black people. You're not teaching the FBI, as you said, you train the FBI. You're not training the FBI in how to stop anti-black racism. How could you train them for that? How do you know anything about it? You've never been in our shoes. How dare you think you can speak on our behalf? Huh. Gotta be kidding me. It's ridiculous. It bothers me. It just gets me so mad to listen to this guy. I don't know why I don't like this guy so much. I do. I know exactly why I don't like him so much. Because he's a liar. He's a liar. He's a con man. He's an articulate, draconian con man. Oh, he speaks so eloquently with that tongue. That tongue, oh my gosh. Somebody needs to check his mouth and see if that thing's split in two. Because that snake knows how to talk. I gotta say it. He knows how to talk. He knows how to talk. He knows. Thank you very much, Sandy. Thank you very much for your support. I thank you, everybody, for your support. Because it is mind-blowing. And this is what makes me more upset. Sandy, I love the animation, the victory animation. What makes me more upset is that he is not speaking his rhetoric from the breakfast table of his community. He is speaking his rhetoric from the breakfast table of the black community, that we let him sit down. Imagine. Thank you very much, Comet 390. Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate everybody and their support for this channel and for my capacity to be able to continue to do these things. I thank you very much. But the black community, who have you invited to dinner? Oh my gosh, he's not Cindy Portier. Look who you invited to breakfast, my friends, and allowed this man to sit down and to spin his lies. Oh, he is like Pharaoh's magicians who's taken their rod and slammed his rod down in front, and his rod became a serpent, and there was no Moses to stand there and to say, watch this. But his serpent was allowed to spin and bite and cast venom towards our community. And they just sat there and watched it spellbound. We got to stop doing that to ourselves. We got to stop doing that to ourselves. I'm not telling content creating shows like The Breakfast Club not to invite him. Oh, we need to hear from him. But don't invite him alone. Make sure when you put him up there, you put up a member of your community who can contradict the fallacies that are flowing out of his mouth like a river. They're falling out of his mouth. He is a liar with a forked tongue, lull you to sleep with a false sense of security and fake facts, right? Fake facts, know what they call fake facts? They call them lies. And you know what? Some of this sentence here, sorry, some of our people are bought and paid for it. The Jewish community has been buying us for years, ladies and gentlemen. And you know what? Sometimes I'm gonna take us off the hook. Sometimes you don't know if you're being supported or if you're being bought, because the Jewish community, in one hand, is supporting us. Some members of the Jewish community financially support the black community. Yes, they do. But some members of the Jewish community force us to speak their narrative by literally buying our commentary, and in this case, buying the platform. Oh, the ADL. I would not doubt if Greenblatt paid for that interview. This guy's not stupid. Oh, this guy, the worst type of devil is a smart devil. Oh, you listen to how he's a tactician. He says, I forgot the number, but it was something like, I wanted to say, maybe he said 30 million? Thank you very much. my brother Adi Al-Katani. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. He said something like 30 million. Did he say that? I don't want to misquote. I don't want to misquote him. He said something like between 3 or 30 million school children. He says that when this is how he termed it, you know, when he said there was a homosexual boy, he was treated unfairly. Apparently he was a Jewish homosexual boy, he was treated unfairly, and the ADL was called, and they descended on the school to give sensitivity training. He says they are the #1 provider of literature. Oh, that's so smart. We're going to make sure we train their children. We're going to make sure that we focus on their finances, and they cannot support anything that boycotts Israel. We're going to make sure that we make their entertainers not be able to say anything against us. Their sports figures not going to be able to say anything against us. We're going to make sure that we go on their popular shows like The Breakfast Club and make sure that we speak a rhetoric that their entire community will ingest. We will make sure that they allow us and don't give us any pushback. Don't ask us any tough questions, so that when we leave there, our imprint is left on their minds. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. You guys gotta know. You gotta know when you are just, they're just waving it in front of your eyes and just hypnotizing you. And this is what they do too, because they make guys like me sound like I'm crazy, because the Jewish community is not all Jonathan Greenblatt. I know that now for sure, for certain. I knew it more now than I did when I started having this conversation. I really, honestly, like I was searching. Show me an Israelite without guile. And I found one yesterday. I absolutely found one yesterday. I found that wonderful professor that I had a conversation with, that I'm going to bring him back on here. Bruce, Illinois State professor. Oh my gosh. That's a good man. That's a good Jew. That's a good Jewish man. And Greenblatt said that we can call him a Jew or you can call him Jewish. He said both, because they asked him. I thought it was a slur to call you a Jew. He goes, no, I'm an American Jew. You can call me an American Jew, or you can call me Jewish. Okay, well, I met a man yesterday. I can't wait to bring this, but I don't want y'all to interfere with him, because he's a good man. I met some great Jewish men. I like Beryl Solomon too. I like him. He's a good guy. I like him. We gave that boy hell when we brought him on this show. Oh Lord, we gave him hell. He was scared. He didn't want to come back, but he's a good guy. And there's some good Jewish guys. There's some powerfully good human beings. There's some good Jewish men and women who walk with us in the civil rights movement. And there were some Jewish individuals who did photo ops. There's some Jewish individuals who gave money but never stopped the systemic issues that took over and caused Black people to be disenfranchised. And in the words of Dr. Umar says, what white person in America has done anything to overthrow the systemic disenfranchisement of Black people in America? Whew. And he said, listen, he said, don't call the Civil Rights Bill, because what they did with the Civil Rights Bill is they slipped in white females and they slipped in the LGBTQ community. And what has taken place is that white females and the LGBT community have taken all the advantages that were supposed to be packaged towards Black people. And now the new minorities are white women or gay men. Bruce Jenner, that's his name. He was on my cereal box. He was one of my heroes growing up, and I'm going to call his name what his bloody name is. His bloody name is Bruce Jenner, okay? I'm not calling you by that name that you put yourself on, Bruce. Bruce Jenner is more of a minority in America than I am. Do you understand that? Bruce Jenner, I'm not going to call him by his new sissy name. I'm not going to call him by that. He is a bigger minority in America than me. I can be called what I don't know what you're going to call me. I don't know what I can be shown as insensitive to to the gender specificity, the orientation specificity of this new minority that was created, then I can become his oppressor. The black man becomes the oppressor of the white man when the white man becomes a homosexual. The black man becomes an oppressor of the white woman when the white woman claims that she's a minority too. And this is what the Civil Rights Act did in America, and took the power and the privilege that was afforded by legislation to the black community, and it basically hijacked it and gave it right back to white people who claim to be gay or just being a female. So, Dr. Umar, hey, you're onto something there. I'm going into my study, the history of religion. Come on, man. Let's just talk. 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 The history of religion 101, baby. 101. I ain't going to be long. I want to go somewhere. I'm going to give you 10 minutes of this. I can't give you long. Where's the first religion formed? Where's the first religious teacher? I'll make this relevant. I'm not jumping into another topic. Trust me. Trust me. I'm a political preacher. Okay. Who is the first, second, and third messianic characters of Genesis? Okay. That's going to be your homework. Okay. You want that to be your homework? Where is the first religion formed? You want I'll give you one answer. Okay. The Garden of Eden. That's where the first religion is formed. It's formed in the Garden of Eden. Right? The second that God said, a religion is formed. It's a religion. God said, a religion is formed right away. And there's many tenets to that religion if you take a look at it deeply. Who's the first religious teacher? That's easy. If the first religion is in the Garden of Eden, who's the first teacher? Huh? Who's the first teacher? If the first religion formed is in the Garden of Eden, who's the first teacher? It's pretty easy. Adam. There you go. He's the preacher. He's the prophet. He's the priest, right? He's the holder of the law. Come on. And what is the first commandment given? It's very easy. If you can get it, come on, you can get it. If the first religion formed in the garden, if the first religious teacher, see, Elohim cannot be the first religious teacher of a religion. He is the God of the religion, right? Don't eat of the tree. There you go, right? And so very instantaneously, God differentiates himself from his creation and says, I will give you a religion. So for these people who think God doesn't deal with religion, yes, he does. The minute that he says out of his mouth, this is what you shall do, this is what you can't do, that's a religion, because it's given to you by a God. If a God gives you an instruction, the instruction is a religion, period. Because he puts consequences and rewards within the capacity of his instruction. Okay, so man has always had a God and has always had instruction from God from the very beginning, from the very primordial formation of what God has established. He always established that there is his will and there's the will of man, and I'm telling you to do my will, or else he wouldn't have to give man a religion. Where are we? Christian paradigm. I'm not sure what you mean, Victor, but you can break it down if you want to. Okay. We're going to get into a quick conversation of apologetics, right? What is Christian apologetics, or apologetics, period? Apologetics, a person who defends or supports something such as a religion, a cause, an organization that is being criticized or attacked by people. I am an apologist for our community. That's right. I'm an apologist for Christ. And I'm an apologist for our community. Those are the two pillars of my apology. All right. And apology is not saying sorry. Apologetics is saying, this is what I present. And this is the guy who started it. I don't know if you know who this guy is. His name was Celsus. And Celsus was a Greek. And so Celsus began to speak. He's a white man, by the way, just so you know. He's a Greek white man who took great issue at the doctrine of the early Christian mind and said, what concept can you possibly have about declaring liberty and declaring victory in a murdered Messiah, right? And in a murdered Jewish Messiah, right? I do not see the logic in your concept. And Celsus adopted Grecian philosophy to essentially cancel the ideology of Christianity from its onset. And so what took place early in Christendom is they realized that we have to not just have a religion of dogma, but we have to have a religion of philosophy. We have to be able to articulate and defend our position, right? And so therefore Christian philosophical conversation or systematic type of theology came from an apology, an apologetics, a defense of the Christian mind from this Greek perspective here of Celsus, right? Okay, we can get into what the Greeks looked like. Greeks were white people, okay? Let's not even get into that. Greeks was white. Those are white people. Okay, when white folks began to run the world, when Alexander and his little boyfriend showed up to take over, okay? Greeks are white folk. We can't fight that one. Were there Greeks of complexion, of pigmentation? Yes. But Greeks are white. Japheth, that is the tribes of Japheth. Those are those tribes. That's when they began to influence their power in the world. Greeks are white folks. Okay, let's not get caught up with that one. Greeks are white. Greeks are white. Romans are white. Greeks are white. The Persians are black. The Babylonians are black. The Greeks are white. This is Genesis 10, brother. This is easy. This is easy genealogy. This is easy anthropology. The Greeks are white. Those are white folks. That's who they were. That's who they are. That's who they still are. They still don't like blacks over there. They still don't like black people in Greece. They still don't like them. Okay. So let's are there individuals that identify as being Greece? Because Greeks, Hellenism, we have Greece, the place, and the Isles of Greece, Sparta and Macedonia and all these other places. And then we have Hellenism, when the Grecian Empire starts to take over the world and starts to make people of other ethnicities hybrid within their culture. So Africa becomes an extension of the Grecian Empire, calling it Alexandria, and other areas, even out to India, where the Grecian culture is spread. So now you might see an Indian, you might see an African speaking Greek, but the Greeks are white. Okay, so don't confuse the culture of Hellenism with the people who are Greek. The Greeks are white. Hellenism became a worldwide phenomenon, so many of the pantheon of humanity began to speak Greek, but the Greeks are white. I'm a Trinidadian with ancestry of Africa who speaks English, but I am not English. I am very African. You understand? So let's be clear. Greeks are white people. We can't change that. That is just poor scholarship to call them something else. There's no Greeks are not black people. Do black people speak Greek in the early age? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because to speak Greek meant that you were educated. To not speak Greek meant that you're a barbarian. But the indigenous people who are Greek are white. Okay? We can have that conversation, Grant's Q, but that's why I call it History 101, brother. That's very easy for you and me to figure out. We don't have to do that hard. It's easy. Greeks are not black people. Okay. We're going too far, man. We can't have everything, brother. We can't have everything. We can't have everything. We can't. Okay, Celsus wrote this work, his Discourse of True Reason, as a polemic against the Christians in approximately 178 CE. Celsus divided the work into two sections. The one in which the objections are put in the mouth of a Jewish interlocutor, and the other in which Celsus speaks as the pagan philosopher that he is. So Celsus basically creates a trope. See where I'm going? He creates a trope. He creates a figurative Greek character, right? And he speaks as a contrary person in his trope, right? His narrative, his figurative narrative, and he has this conversation, this debate going back and forth in respect to his philosophy. So Celsus ridiculed Christians because they advocated blind faith instead of reason. And about 60 years after it was first published, the book written by Celsus inspired a massive refutation by a gentleman by the name of Origen. Okay, this is big. Origen. Now, this is what we have to remember with true scholarship. True scholarship begins with digging out the ancestry of the language, ladies and gentlemen. Origen was brilliant, and nobody of his time could mess with him because he was a linguist. He understood the Greek, he understood the Hebrew, he could speak Latin, right? And so his genius was in understanding the contextuality of language. And language and the understanding of language, context, culture, and history of language is what allows you to truly be a real intellect. Us today, we are borrowing from the great minds of the ancient past because we don't have to do the deep digging of learning particular languages, because I can use a Greek and Hebrew concordance and I can pick up a language that I don't actually know. But these men they dived into it. Just like my brother is trying to dive into the ancestry of a people. When we dive into the ancestry of a language and the ancestry and the geography and the anthropology, we come to the truth, right? So even that little dialogue about are Greeks black or white, when you dig into that and figure that out, that awakens you to the realities of how history is forming itself and why certain people are in certain positions, okay? What are the similarities between faith and philosophy? Because philosophy is not a faith, but a faith can be a philosophy. I'm going to skip that one. Introducing the Holy Spirit, the pneuma, what are the properties? I'm going to skip that one. Yes. The study of the fundamentals, the definition of philosophy, the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence that frames a system of thought and lifestyle. And I apologize that the screen is cutting this off. I wish I could have used it in true PowerPoint form, but I'm not going to mess with it because I'm not a techie. Other people usually do this stuff for me. I'm not a techie. But let's say philosophy, the definition, the study of a fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence that frames a system of thought and lifestyle, the definition of a philosophy. We have a definition of faith. This is something that we don't have to fight with. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So faith defined secularly, a rational attitude towards a potential object of knowledge, which arises when we are subjectively certain it is true, even though we are unable to gain theoretical or objective certainty. This is me here. By contrast, knowledge implies objective and subjective certainty, while opinion is the state of having neither objective nor subjective certainty. Let me say it again. Faith defined secularly, a rational attitude towards a potential object of knowledge, which arises when we are subjectively certain it is true, even though we are unable to gain theoretical or objective certainty. By contrast, knowledge implies objective and subjective certainty, while opinion is the state of having neither objective nor subjective certainty. Faith is a philosophy, but philosophy is not faith, okay? Faith is a philosophy, philosophy, but philosophy is not faith. It is a broad wall of divide. Therefore, this is what it means. Because of my faith, and Miles Monroe said it simple, and I'm gonna say it different. Miles Monroe said it like this: the Bible will make you a genius. That's what Miles Monroe said. The Bible will make you a genius because I can utilize my faith, pull out the virtues, the objective truths of my faith, and now develop a life philosophy, right? Okay. So when the scripture says something like, I can take anything, the wages of sin is death, right? If I use that part of my faith as an objective life philosophy, I can say to myself that every time I sin, I actually enter closer to death. Every time I go towards something that God does not want for my life, I jeopardize my life. Every time I aspire to live below my calling, I put myself in a position where I can cancel my mortality. That is the philosophy that I can draw from my faith. And so my faith gives us the platform of a philosophy. And so I can stand up in my faith and preach my philosophy. In my faith, I can say, if I was standing in the Old Testament, right? Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, life for a life. In my faith, I can say, if you lift your hand, I'll cut it off. In my faith, I can say, if you come for my life, I will make sure I send you to the cemetery. My faith could put me in a position to make sure that I could walk out a worldview philosophy. But then Jesus messes with my philosophy, right? He messes with my philosophy, and he tells me that if they strike me on this side, I need to turn the other cheek. So it tells me that tooth for a tooth. Sometimes I need to lose a tooth. Sometimes I need to allow certain things to allow me to be offended, because God now picks up the platform of my offense and delivers me from things that I cannot fight for myself. So faith mixes my philosophy. It gauges how my mortality reacts and how my mortality acts. Is that okay? I'm just going to skip this lesson. The judge shall live by faith, another philosophy. Early apologists. I'm going to break this down really quick, and I'm going to be done in 10 minutes. Bank robbers have faith. They think they can rob the bank and get away with it. But their faith is not based on a God. And this is the key about faith. Faith has to be based on a God, or it's not truly faith. It's hope. A faith puts a deity or a power bigger than you in a position to activate what you need. So some people put faith in the universe, thinking that the universe has the power and the benevolence to activate what you need. But when we look into it, the universe not only is not it is an it, and it does not have a benevolent mindset towards me. It doesn't operate in the Jeremiah 29 and 11. And it does not have a mind towards me for good and not evil, to bring me to an expected end, because the universe is an it. So the bank robber, who is he believing in? His faith normally is in himself. And sometimes you can put faith in yourself, but you better be bigger than the thing you're going against. Okay. The early apologists, Marcion, Tertullian. I talked about these guys before. Justin the Martyr, Sibelius, Origen, Montanus. I'm just going to do a quick thing about these, and I'm done in 5 minutes. Marcion, for those who don't remember this guy, he's a gentleman who decided that he was taking all the Jewish references out of the Bible. Why? Because he hated the Jews. He did not like how the Jewish community in his era were hampering the church's ascent to truly gaining their true self. And so he took it out on scripture and started to pull the Jewish references out. He didn't want to use no Old Testament. He took some of the Jewish references out of the New Testament, and his father, who was a bishop, threw him out of the church, right? And he actually published his own Bible. An ancient man publishing a Bible. We know how hard it is to write a book now. He published his own Bible, the Marcion Bible, and it caused the church to say, whoa, we need to start publishing our own things if men like this are going to stand up and declare what is Bible, what is canon, right? And this is another, and the reason I bring him up, and the reason I wanted to do this, this is another example of a Christian man with his mind in a place where he doesn't like Jews and forces the issue where he creates actually a manuscript because of his dislike for the Jews, something that is bereft of Jewish content, right? So they could say Marcion was anti-Semitic, right? Okay, this is, like I said, there's a reason. The separation of the gospel from all Jewish fragments. The canon of Marcion, no Old Testament. The book of Luke, 10 epistles of Paul, edited to remove any Jewish references. He was an excellent administrator. His father was a bishop. However, he was thrown out of the church, so he went to Rome and started his own, right? This is a prime example from the Christian worldview, how separatism can take you almost to the point of extremism. It can take you to the place where you lose things that you actually need. So he threw away the Old Testament. And in throwing away the Old Testament, he lost part of the faith. And so this is why we have to be careful in the Black community, in the Christian community, in the non-religious community. We have to be careful because we cannot throw the Jews in the garbage. We can't throw them away. What we have to do is we have to, as somebody has said very wisely, we have to eat the meat and spit out the bones. We have to recognize that there is a part of the Jewish ethos, the Jewish story that is part and parcel with us, that we can hold hands with, but there's part of the story that there's not, okay? Marcion. I'm not going any further than Marcion. Marcion is the best example we have. It's 8:11. I told you I'm not going to keep you past 8 o'clock. I'm gonna get us out of here and I'm gonna close. Very quickly, let's go back here. Boom, boom. And let's jump back into here. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to come on and I want to have, I want to give you some scholarship and I want to give you some of my, I would call it indignation. And I want to pour it out in balance. Because we need to have a complete, we need to have our complete mind on properly. We can't be running in the direction of reckless extremism. We got to keep our heads on, and we also cannot allow sometimes our ears to be plugged with the false rhetoric of a community, of a section of a community speaking things to our own detriment. And we absolutely cannot remain silent. We have to be, and some people, they don't like it, but we have to be angry. As the Bible says, you can be angry and sin not. But we have to be angry and not let our platforms proliferate hate against us. Can't let it happen. Can't let it happen. And I understand, bless you, Dylan Turner. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, very much. I know that not all of us share the same ideological perspective. Sometimes we have different historical information, but I tell you what we share. We share a collective victimization from groups of peoples, not just one, but groups of people in the world, where we will always be the byproduct of racism. Let me say this very clearly. When the Ethiopian came to Israel And they decided that they were going to allow the Ashkenazi to cause them to convert. And they started now to look at the Hebrew Israelites in Dimona. The Hebrew Israelites felt this. This is what they told me, that the Ethiopian looked their nose down on them because they saw them. Oh, you are those African-American slaves who have come back here. We are the Ethiopians. We've never been conquered. We are not you blacks. We are different. And now we are part of the Israeli conversation, and you are still on the outside. The African American, the child of West African slavery, Plymouth Rock is still bussing you in your head every doggone day. And we have to get so angry when new hegemonic rocks are thrown at our head. Haven't we ducked enough? Haven't we defended ourselves enough? Some of us were fortunate enough to be planted down in the West Indies like myself and rose up in places like Haiti and still paid a terrible price. Took over places like Trinidad and Tobago and held our ground in our little islands. But to the greatness above us, to the great men and women in America, we all stand in solidarity with you. From Africa to South America, where slaves were taken all over the world, we are one people. One people. We are one people. And when they punch you, we say, ouch, in the West Indies. When they step on your toe in Ferguson, we wince in Ghana. We are one people. And when they spit in our direction in Dimona, we feel the wetness in North America. We are one people. The Jew has done something that we must remember and we must duplicate. They have said, where Jews are persecuted anywhere in the world, Jews will come to their rescue. Let me say it again. Where Jews are persecuted anywhere in the world, Jews will come to their rescue. They will not allow anybody to bully a Jew, a little gay Jewish boy, a pedophile murderer. They will start an organization to defend him. The Black community needs to do the same. This is why I went and I said, Brittany Griner, she has to come home. And you guys were saying, well, you know what she was doing. No. No. We have suffered too much to even let one lamb sit in a Russian prison. We have suffered too much to let one hair on our head, oh my God, not one hair on our head should be pulled out or creased without an army rising up and saying, we will seek you out for one hair on our head. We are the most vulnerable people in the world. We are the strongest people in the world. We are the most noble people in the world. And we are defenseless when they decide to come for us. We were defenseless when they came for us in Tulsa. We were defenseless when they walked down the streets of Watts and when they come for us in Ferguson, when they come for us anywhere in the world, we remain defenseless from Harlem. We are defenseless in Montgomery, and we're defenseless today. Nothing's changed. And now this is the worst part. As I finish, as I close, as I go home, this is the worst part. It's not the white supremacist bullies that are pushing us around no more. The white supremacist was pushing around the blacks, pushed around the Irish, pushed around the Italians, and he beat the crap out of Jews. And now the same guys that have been getting beaten up, the same guys that we would go and stand shoulder to shoulder with, they're turning around and pretending like they're our bullies. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine in this age that there is a community, section of that community, not all of them, but there's a section of that community that dares roar against us like this? No. From Brittany Griner to Kyrie Irving, if one of us is in jeopardy, the entire of us is in jeopardy. Do not let one hair of our head, one shaving of skin be taken advantage of. Nothing. Not one bruise on our body should be not accounted for in this true pantheon of this new awakening. And I'm telling you this right now. We must have an advocacy voice, and our voice must roar like a lion. And where our voice is not heard, our presence shall be felt. And if you do not do it, your oppression will never leave you. It will never leave you. Emancipation is nothing. It's nothing, because they freed you and they promised you reconstruction, and they did nothing to, they gave you nothing. They didn't even give you a dusty old mule. They didn't give you any land from the Homestead Act. They collected you when you stood still and called it a vagrancy law. They collected you if you hung around on the wrong side of the Mason-Dixie line for too long. Come on. When you escaped to freedom, they came and they got you and they took you back. How long are you going to allow it? This is Del K. Brereton. This is The Real Spiel. I pray that God awaken you to your true self, and you find your voice all over this place, from elementary school kids to senior citizens, that the glory of God would rest upon you, that nothing, so that God would speak to you like he spoke to Joshua and said, no man can stand before you, that we would be like elephants in the earth. When we walk, the ground would shake. When we speak, the heavens would roar. I bless you, my people. Those that love us more. Those that stand with us, we squeeze your hand in solidarity. Whether you look like us, whether you come from where we come from, we thank you for your allegiance. To those that are our Nicodemus supporters, that pray for us in secret places, we appreciate you. And for those that stand in our way, your time is near. That's all I got to say. You guys have a great night. Thank you very much for entertaining this little country boy from Trinidad and Tobago, this Canadian who's speaking things to an American populace. You think it's none of my business, but you're my people. And so therefore, just because there's a line drawn by a conqueror, there's a line drawn by a colonizer, it doesn't mean we're not still family. Don't look at that passport, brother. That passport, sister, ain't who you are. Who you are is who you're looking at in the mirror, because when you look at the mirror, you see me. And when I look in the mirror, I see you. God bless you. Have a great night. Thank you for your support. Thank you for everybody who's come on this page and sat here for a while and listened. Thank you to those who don't agree, because you know what? Even if we don't agree with each other here, they still look at us and say, Negro, I'm still not giving you your 40 acres and a mule. Understand where the fight is. It's not in our doctrine. It's not in our dogma. It's not in our ideology. The fight's in the street. The fight's in public opinion. The fight's in policy. The fight's in Washington. The fight's in Israel. Okay? The fight's in the ADL. That's where the fight is. It's not here. Right? I'm your brother. God bless you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.